Welcome to another edition of Jules Voto's Photo Focus. In this video, I will be talking about Nikon's 50mm 1.4 Z-mount lens as a walk-around lens. How well does this lens perform as a walk-around lens? And I shot this lens on my Nikon Z8 as I normally do when doing these lens reports. Now, I've done several videos on this lens in the past. When I first got it, I did an unboxing video in early October. I did my initial review of this lens, and also more recently, I shot this lens at a high school basketball game. I will put a link to those videos in the description below. So I went to FDR Park in South Philadelphia and just walked around shooting whatever uh, on a cloudy day. And this shot was at 2.8, and it's very sharp at 2.8. This one here also at 2.8. Focus was on the grass, and it's sharp edge to edge. Of course, there's fall off in the background uh, because of depth of field. I then went to f8 and even a little sharper than a 2.8. And here's a shot of the famous gazebo at FDR Park. This is at 1.4. And you see very little vignetting if you look in the upper left and right corners. Now we go to 2.8, and the sharpness is very close. Yes, it's sharper at 2.8, but not by a big margin. Now this shot here of this tree is at 1.4, and I really like the way this lens renders. It's not as bitingly sharp as more modern lenses. Now this little sequence here, there's 4 images here of these red leaves. Focus was on the center 2 leaves, and I shot initially at 1.4. This shot is at 2.0. Then we're going to go to 2.8 and finally 5.6. And of course, you gain depth of field and a little bit of sharpness as you stop down. And I think this lens, probably its optimum aperture is 5.6, but I would not hesitate to use it anywhere from at any aperture, actually. I didn't shoot at 11 or f16. Now here I just wanted to test the sharpness on these columns. I focused on the column on the right, and there's some texture in this column. And now we're going to zoom in and try to get a little better look at that. And you can see the column behind that is out of focus. It doesn't fall within the depth of field. Now we go to f2. It sharpens up a little bit. And again, we're going to zoom in now. And you're starting to get just a tiny bit more depth of field. Now we go to f2.8, a little bit sharper still. I think from 2.8 to 5.6, this lens is very close. Although, like I said earlier, I would say that 5.6 may be the optimum aperture. Now we're at 4.0. And now we're going to zoom in on that one. And now you can start to see more texture in the column behind. And finally, I went to 5.6, and here we have a good bit more depth of field, and we have some sharpness on the second column because of the increase in depth of field at 5.6. This one was also at 5.6. The focus was on that red little bush there, and very sharp, edge to edge. You could see all the detail in the grass. Now this was shot at 5.6, and look at the reflection of the tree in the water. Make a note of that. And now we're going to look at it at 1.4. And I just love the way this looks at 1.4. The branches on the tree just stand out more. And I just really like it. It's almost like a painterly look, I think. Here again, we're at 1.4 with the focus on this thing in the center. I'm not sure what it is, but the background is completely gone. It has nice bokeh. This is at 5.6 and really shows the sharpness of this lens. A lot of good detail. And here's another shot at 1.4. The focus was on the grass and the just on the edge of the water. And here we're zooming in a little bit to show you that sharpness. And really at that distance, even at 1.4, you get some depth of field. It's when you get closer at a wide aperture that there's almost no depth of field. This is at 5.6. And now I shot down at some leaves at 1.4. Now I wasn't perfectly parallel to the ground with the camera, so it was angled a little bit. And then I went to 5.6. And at 5.6, we are gaining more sharpness out at the edges. But in the center at 1.4, this lens is very sharp. Here we are at 2.8 at a wide shot. So I like the way this lens performed at FDR Park. Now, one morning I got up, it was foggy, and I love photographs in the fog. Fortunately, I had the camera on the dining room table with the 50 millimeter lens. I just poked out the door, took this shot. You could see my neighbor in the background walking his dog. And here's another shot from a different angle. And just love what the fog does. I did a video in the fog in Biloxi, Mississippi earlier this year. I will put a link in the description below to that video. Weather conditions like this, fog, rain, snow, are great for photography. Okay, so I enlisted my son to do a few quick portraits in our backyard. This is at 1.4 with the 50. Here we are zoomed in. It's very sharp. No, it's not as sharp as the 85 1.8 or the 135 plana. Here we are at f2. It sharpens up just a little bit, but perfectly usable as a portrait lens. And for 3/4 portraits. Now here we are. I went to the 40, my 40 millimeter at f2. Still sharp enough for 3/4 portraits, full length portraits, I think, but not as sharp as the 1.4. Here we are at 2.8. Just wanted to see what it would do. One stop down, and like the 1.4, 50 1.4, it sharpens up a little bit, closing down the stop. That's to be expected, but I prefer the 50 for this type of work. Okay, so we took a little trip to New York on December 8th of 2024. This was shot through the window of a cab with the 51.4. I shot most of the day with the 14 to 30. And that's a great walk around lens to shoot in a big city. So we went over to Strawberry Fields in Central Park. There's a memorial there to John Lennon. And every year on December 8th, a large number of people gather and sing Beatles songs. It was the anniversary of John Lennon's death in 1980. Here this young lady is putting down a peace button. They put flowers and candles and pictures, as you can see, and it's a large gathering of people. And I believe it's been going on since a year after John's death. And they also do this on his birthday, which is in October. Now, this shot from the same spot is looking back towards the Dakota. That is where John lived and where he was killed on December 8th, 1980. So this lens works out great for a variety of things. As you can see, here's some skyscrapers looking south from Central Park. And this is Central Park West, another apartment building, a lot of apartment buildings on Central Park West. And it's such a nice gathering of people of all walks of life, singing Beatles songs, all ages, and it's really a nice thing to be a part of. So if you're ever in New York on December 8th or in October, please stop by. This is my son and his girlfriend. It was starting to get cold. It was a really nice day, much warmer than normal on a typical December in New York City. And here's a little flag indicating Strawberry Fields. And you can see the Dakota in the background. Now, as we were leaving, we're walking to get a cab to take us back to our car. So notice this gentleman doing some poetry on a typewriter. But what's interesting about this picture to me is I got the shot of the gentleman. I didn't notice till afterwards those four people in the background. I don't know, to me it just kind of reminds me of the four Beatles back there. There's an old photo of the Beatles kind of posed that way. So we're in the cab, headed back to our car. I continued to shoot a few shots through the window. It was a lot of traffic. And this is in Times Square and just all the lights in New York. I think it's probably my favorite city to photograph in. So I think this lens worked out well for this type of photography. It's great to have that 1.4 speed. It's plenty sharp for this type of photography. It's light and easy to carry. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I usually publish a new video every Monday morning and Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So thanks for watching.